Hello, good morning. I hope that you're all well and that you've had a good week. I have got so much to show you today. One of the things that I want to talk about in this video is about the right size needle and floss. But I want to cover some other things before I get to it. But hang on with the video to listen to that. This week, oh my gosh, it's been amazingly busy. Sue came round on Monday and we worked on the Great British Sample Weekend, which went really, really well. And then I knew that my tea towel order was arriving from the printing company this week. So I was very, very busy constructing boxes. When boxes come, they come flat packed and you've got to put them all together. Now, these are the boxes. Inside the boxes, there are 3 tea towels that need to be put into cellophane bags and then sealed up and posted. Sounds simple, but when you're doing loads of them, oh my gosh, it's such a massive, massive task. And I had printer trouble this week. My printer, which has been a wonderful workhorse for me, packed up. So I had to order a new printer. It came late Friday afternoon and it took me 2 hours to set it up with the help of our IT guy. We just don't know what was wrong. It just kept on saying that the installation wasn't complete. So it was very, very late Friday night when I started or resumed to print labels, but every single tea towel order was collected by the postman on Saturday. So everybody who's orders, their tea towels have gone out. Now, if you order 2 sets or 3 sets, you will have 3 separate packages. If you ordered more than 3 sets, they will come as a parcel. And this is crazy. These boxes are letter size, large letter size. So, for example, to ship this to the States, it's just short of £6. If I put 2 of these boxes together, they become parcel size and it costs me about £20. So that's why if you have ordered multiple sets up to 3, they come in separate envelopes. So although they've all gone out together, they might get separated in the post. You could have one day, one the next. So don't panic if you only receive 1 box initially. You've got more boxes coming. Now, with regards to the tea towels, when I finished packing them, I did have some spare ones. Obviously, I couldn't divide by 3 and get the correct number of boxes initially. So today, I have got some more tea towels available on my website. And what I decided, I realised that not everybody is on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. So if you only follow me on Flosstube, sometimes you find out about things too late. So I'm announcing it in this Flosstube that there are a few more tea towel sets available on my website now. If any are left tomorrow, then I will post that on social media. So everybody who's watching my Flosstube, you've got first chance of grabbing those surplus tea towels. So many people have been having them made into project bags, and a friend of mine in the UK shared a photograph with me this week of her project bags that had been made by Patchwork. Hold on. Just a second. That's gone out of my head. Just a second. Let me just look properly because we don't want to give out wrong information, do we, Bertie? Good boy. You're a good boy, Bertie Boo. It was Bertie Boo's birthday last Sunday. I forgot to say in my Flosstube it was his birthday. So we had a very special afternoon, didn't we? Yes, we did. Just a moment. Sorry to keep you waiting. Here we go. Patchwork Paw Print Val. She's on Etsy, Patchwork Paw Print, and she made the tea towels into project bags for Leslie. They're beautiful. Now, those tea towels, I never thought of making them into project bags. When I started, this idea started to ferment about 2 years ago. I use tea towels to cover my work, and that's why I wanted to have tea towels that were sampler related. My friend Deborah had a tea towel that I had given her made into a project bag, and it wasn't until then I thought, yeah, they make nice project bags as well. The fabric's so sturdy that they're good, you know, strong project bags. Anyway, let's get back to it. This week I had this box come, and this is a really, really heavy box, and it's been something I have been waiting for so long. It came on Friday, it got caught up in customs, so it's a bit delayed, but I was so busy doing the tea towels, I thought, no, I'm not stopping, because I know if I stop, I would want to spend time exploring, putting it together, trying what's inside. So I was a very good girl. I did the tea towels first, and then I was going to do it yesterday afternoon. I was so tired. I sat down in the chair and I fell asleep, and I think I must have slept about 5 or 6 hours in the chair. So there we are. So this box, which has been long anticipated and has caused great excitement, has remained unopened. I'm going to open it this afternoon. I want to do it when I've got time. Inside is a Potoki stand. I first saw the Potoki products when I visited Hobby House Needleworks last year, and they do the most fantastic easels, little wooden boxes, and tabletop stands for your hoop, and they're so beautiful. And I've been to a few things where people have had the stands for the hoops, and they are so beautiful. Now, I don't really use a tabletop stand for a hoop. If I'm stitching in a hoop when I'm traveling or a workshop, I'm quite happy to stitch in hand. But Potoki do floor stands, and they look so fabulous that I thought, right, I'm having one. So next week I will show you the contents of the box, and I'll give you a review because I would have had a chance to use it. So more of that next week, and let's push that out of the way. This week we've had a very special release. This girl has been waiting since the end of 2019 to be released. The very beautiful Eliza Fitch. 1797. That is a long time ago. Now, I don't think these colours are showing up true. I always say that, but I really don't. The colours on this sampler are so beautiful. This is a gorgeous sampler that's very different. And as you know, we like different at Hands Across the Sea samplers. Now, this sampler, the verse is over 1, but in her booklet, we have given you an additional graph, which is the, hold on a second, which is the sampler with the graph charted over 2. So if you're not an over 1 stitcher, you can still stitch Eliza Fitch. Well, actually her name is Elizabeth Fitch. She abbreviated it. She put that little dot in because she couldn't fit Elizabeth Fitch in there. This is such a pretty sampler. It was reproduced by Sandra in Australia, and it was stitched by Suzanne Sarotti. And as I said last week, we'd originally intended this to be the release for the fundraiser for the rural fire brigade in Australia when all the terrible fires were going on. Then Jane Marshall became available to us and we decided to switch to an Australian sampler for an Australian fundraiser. Eliza then got put on the back burner, and I'm just so thrilled to finally release this little girl. Now, Elizabeth has a fascinating backstory. When I first saw this sampler, I wondered if she might have been a Norfolk, but it turns out that Elizabeth's sampler was actually stitched in the county of Essex, and Essex is separated from Norfolk by Suffolk. Elizabeth was born in 1787. She was 10 when she stitched her sampler, and she was born at Hellions Bumpstead. That's a lovely word, isn't it? Bumpstead in Essex. The village is located near Haverhill, and it's where Essex, Suffolk and Cambridge borders actually meet up. Elizabeth was one of 13 children, and we know that Elizabeth had a child out of wedlock, and this was a terrible thing at that stage or time in history. And for unmarried women who had a child, it was just a terrible thing to happen to them. They were ostracised by society, and quite often their families, they couldn't work to feed themselves and their babies. They would go into the workhouse, they would have to give the children away. But that didn't happen to Elizabeth. Her family stood by her, and she actually lived really a very respectable life. We know in 1841 she was living with her oldest brother Samuel in Bishop Stortford in Hertfordshire, and she was still living with him in 1851, and her occupation is described as a schoolmistress. So I think that if society knew that she was an unmarried mother, she would not have had the position of a schoolmistress. In 1861, Elizabeth is again still in Stortford. She's 74 years of age and she's working as a governess. And we see her son is living with her at that stage. I just have so much respect for Elizabeth that she didn't let it beat her. She made a life for herself. I love that, I really do. Now let's talk about the sampler. The sampler uses 8 colours and it was stitched with Soie 103. In the booklet we include conversion for Soie d'Alger and DMC, and you only need 1 spool or skein whether you're stitching on 28 count or 56 count linen. The sampler is all cross stitch except for this little bit of satin stitch around her name and the date, and the cross stitch over one is the verse, which you have the option of stitching it over to. This is so pretty, and then this beautiful border as well, very pretty. I wish the colours showed better in this light. If I film later in this room, it's so bright because the sun will flood in that you know, there would be beams of light coming across the screen. So I have to do this early in the morning to make this work. But of course it's a little bit dingy in here at that time, so it doesn't pick up the colours. Oh, I'm going to go off on a side shoot. I'm often asked about this little area that I stitch in. Now this is like a little it's almost like a half of an octagonal. It's a circular little projection off our drawing room, and it has 4 windows here, and this is the view from the windows that I see as I'm talking to you. It's one of my favourite spots. This is like a little quiet area that you can sit and read the papers, have a cup of coffee, do the Sudoku or the crossword, and talk to you on Sunday mornings. Right, back to Elizabeth. The sampler is 174 stitches by 219. If you stitched it on 28 count linen, it'd be 12.43 by 15.64. If you stitched it on 36 count linen, it would be 9.67 by 12.17. Or if you stitched it on 46 count linen, which the model was stitched on, it would be 7.57 by 9.52. The model was stitched on legacy linen, which is a beautiful Italian linen, which is easily available from the States, from Australia, from the UK. It's a linen that has been commissioned by Access Commodities, and they wholesale it to needlework stores. The Jersey Cream, it's a beautiful, beautiful colour. Now, with legacy linen, you can have the same colour in different counts, but each count, the linen is called a different name. So the comparable colours in the legacy linen to Jersey Cream would be Russian Tea Cake in 37 count and Victoria Sponge Cake in 30 count. So there's some options for you. Do you know, my brain's gone blank. There is a comparable in the higher count. I just can't think what it is. I'm so sorry. If you know, pop it in the comments on the video. Enjoy her. She's special. She's very, very different, and she's going to look absolutely fabulous on your sampler wall. She's available as a printed booklet and a PDF download from the Hands Across the Sea Samplers website. The PDF download has colour and black and white charts, and they have multi-page charts and single page charts, and each one comes with the over 2 adaptation for the verse for you. We've given you as many options as possible there. The stores around the world should have access to these booklets. They are with our distributors, so no matter where you live, you should be able to get a copy of the booklet. Now, we've talked about that there's over 1 text in this sampler, and I always feel sad when people go, oh, I can't do over 1, I don't like doing over 1. It is such a shame. One of the biggest mistakes we all make is we psych ourselves out. One of my dearest friends, one of her first samplers she stitched was all over 1, and she never knew any different. So she came to cross stitch, chose a pattern that was all over 1, and she just did it. Sometimes I think that when we listen to people going, oh, I don't stitch over 1, I can't do over 1, we psych ourselves out and we don't come to it with an open mind. When I started to stitch over 1, I didn't like the way it looked because you had to squidge everything in to make it fit. But that was through my own lack of knowledge. When you stitch over 1, on linen, you have to have the right thickness of thread. Now, if you think about it, if you stitched 28, 32, 36 count linen with DMC, you use 2 strands because you need 2 strands to cover that size of linen. But if you stitched on 40 or 46 count, you would use 1 strand of DMC. So let's take this to another example, to the Overa Soirs range. If you were stitching on 28 count or 32 count, you would use 2 strands of soie d'Alger. If you were stitching on 36 count, you would use 1 strand of soie d'Alger. The holes are getting smaller, so you need less silk to cover the stitch. If you were stitching on 40 count or 46 count, you could use 1 strand of soie d'Alger or 1 strand of soie 103. If you were stitching on 56 count, you could use 1 strand of soie 103 or 1 strand of saphine. Saphine is the very finest thread that Overa Soirs produce. Now, let's go down to 36 count, because that's a very popular size linen. So say, for example, you were stitching your sampler with 2 strands of DMC or 1 strand of soie d'Alger, and you came to an over 1 section. If you got a spool of soie 103, which is finer, that over 1 would be so easy. It would be just as easy as stitching cross stitch over 2. And what makes it easy is the fact that the thread is finer and it will fit comfortably in the space that you're stitching it in. Try it, it's a game changer. If you were stitching, say, on 40, 46 or 56 count with, say, soie 103, for the over 1, drop down to the saphine. It is, honestly, it is a game changer. Don't be afraid of over 1. It is the same stitch as cross stitch over 2, and don't psych yourself out. You can do anything that you believe that you can do. Have faith in yourself. Now, the other thing that's really, really important when you are stitching is that you stitch with the right size of needle. Now, a lot of people judge the size of the needle by the fabric that they're stitching on. But if you've got the right thickness of floss for the size fabric you're stitching on, you need to have the right size needle, not for the fabric, but for the floss. Everything with the needle comes down to the size of the eye and the tip. You have to have the right tip on the needle. If you're embroidering, you want a sharp point. If you are cross stitching, you want a tapestry point needle. The eye is determined by what you're going to use that needle for, what thread you're going to put through that eye. Now, for example, if you were stitching on 36 or 40 or 46 count, a number 20 with DMC or soie d'Alger, and number 28 tapestry point is the needle to use. If you're going to be stitching with soie 103 or soie saphine, you have to drop down to a much smaller eye. Otherwise, what happens, your silk will just come out of the eye of your needle. And, you know, that is a very frustrating thing. If you're stitching with soie 103 or soie saphine, you need some number 10s or number 12s. Number 10 is the one they recommend for soie 103, and number 12 is what they recommend for saphine. But I'll let you into a little secret. I like these number 12s for both of them. They are short beaded tapestry point needles. I use John James because John James is easily accessible in the UK. John James Needle have their own website. You order, 9 times out of 10 it's here the next day or the day after. But there are various different brands of these needles. These needles are what you need to use when you're stitching with Soie 103 and Soie d'Alger. So if you have the right thickness of floss with the right needle, stitching over one, it's as pleasurable as stitching over two. I promise you. Don't psych yourself out. Last week I showed this little sampler, and you know I said that I thought it had whispers of Norfolk. Well, it turns out it is a Norfolk sampler. A specialist in Norfolk samplers contacted me to say they have found Anne Ravens in Norfolk, and they had in fact been researching a group of teachers of which they suspect Anne Ravens was in. The Ravens family were silk weavers. So, you know, it's good to share things on social media or on Flosstube, because other people can give you feedback. If you remember, I said, you know, last week, it's good to share knowledge. So yeah, that was a lovely little find. A sampler of that size, it's so rare, something to be cherished. This week I did not finish Marta. I literally didn't stitch all week. When I was constructing these boxes, you get lots and lots of paper cuts. I had all cuts down here all through my fingers, and I had a really nasty one just there, and I couldn't stitch because every time I touched it my finger was bleeding. So from when I showed this sampler last Sunday, last night was the first time I had to stitch on it, and I actually did quite well. I got this and these in, and this. I've only got 3 more letters to stitch and she will be finished. I should have stayed up last night, but I was just so tired, and I thought, well, I can finish her on Sunday. Such a pretty sampler. Very, very pleased with this. I'm stitching this with Soie 103 664, and this fabric is Wood Smoke by Tabby Cat Linen. It's a very useful fabric to have in your stash. It's a really good colour. Cards. We're going to have 2 cards that are the same. They're both Lucy Barber's. Let's see where this one's from. Dear Nicola, as I'm about to start stitching the lovely samplers you so carefully curated for your celebratory box, I enjoy savouring each booklet, reading the story of each girl and travelling on my imaginary European holiday. As a child, my father kept his promise to my maternal grandparents to take our family to visit them in France, where he had met my mother during World War II. My best childhood memories are of those visits. All your exquisitely wrapped gifts remind me of the little treasures my mama and papa had waiting for my sisters and me. I am a self-taught stitcher. Let's start again. I am a self-taught stitcher who learned from books as a teenager. I started on pre-printed linen kits, then to Ada, then to linen. There is something about stitching samplers that evokes the same precious comfort as a child feels whilst in their favourite safe place. That's such a good way of explaining it. I can only hope that the girls who stitch these samplers found such a sense of contentment as they stitch, despite the harsh reality in which some may have found themselves. As a professional musician in a symphony orchestra, I have been blessed to perform in the magnificent concert halls of the countries represented in our Red Box stitching excursion, and enjoy recalling many cherished memories from those tours. That must have been amazing, such a special thing to do. Wow. Stitching helps calm the flood of adrenaline that follows a performance and is a perfect way to unwind at the end of my day. I am currently stitching Mary Ann Bourne's Rose Ada Featherstone and Florence Mary Dickinson. I have a number of your samplers and hope to complete them in my lifetime. Each one becomes my favourite as I stitch it. That's funny because that, whichever one you're working on is always your favourite. Oh, Nicola, my enthusiasm for samplers has been ignited by your immense contribution to our stitching community. I hope the pleasure we receive is returned to you 1,000-fold. Oh, it is. Honestly, it really, really is. For this and your kind, informative videos, I'm eternally thankful. May God bless you. I very much look forward to meeting you and Claudia Dutcher-Kitzler at Hobby House in November. Gosh, I'm really looking forward to meeting you too. I've got a big hug for you. Thank you. One more. Dear Nicola, I was the lucky Australian who was online late one night and was able to grab the extra box that arrived down here. That's right, a box went astray and ended up in Australia. I was unlucky to miss out the first time, so a US online friend showed me her box, so it wasn't a complete surprise, but each envelope was a delight to open. So much care and love went into its production. Thank you. We have a few things in common. I'm turning 60 in 2 weeks and my favourite colour is red. I have had a lot of changes in my life over the past 2 years. We lost our dear mother in 2021 during lockdown and it was horrendous. She too was a needleworker and prolific quilter and I miss her. I'm so sorry. It's terrible to lose a loved one and yes, I understand it must have been horrendous in lockdown. Right, okay. Last year I treated myself to a quilting tour of the UK, my first big trip. Loved it and hope to return. We did all the touristy things and much more. It was like doing a lap of England. We visited London, Cambridge, York, Lake Windermere, Birmingham, Bath and of course Cornwall, which I loved. Not one drop of rain in 4 weeks and new friendships made. My next trip is later this year, is a cruise right round Australia, which will take 28 days. I've been, and I'm not going to say exactly where she's from because I'm trying not to put names to these cards. Okay, so let's skip that little bit. I've been married for 33 years this week. I have 3 adult children and a month-old granddaughter. How precious. She is just precious and has brought joy to all our lives. Thank you again for your work, bringing us lovely samplers. And if you could invent a speedy needle, I would appreciate it. Gosh, I'd like one of those. But you know what? If stitching samplers we could do as quickly as sort of like we machined a quilt, it wouldn't mean so much to us. It's the time we invest in these samplers that make them so special. I can look at a sampler and I can remember what I was doing in my life. It's like when you listen to a song on the radio, it takes you back to certain times in your life. And these girls, a sampler that's seen you through a tough time, you have a different type of fondness for than say one that you were ecstatically happy whilst you were stitching. The tough time samplers are the ones that maybe supported you that little bit more. This week I've seen 2 finishes on social media of samplers that I actually stitched the models for. The first one was Sherry's beautifully stitched Emily Calwar, which she's just had framed at the Attic Needleworks. This is my Emily. Emily's such a bright, colourful sampler, and it was so nice stitching with this blue, which is a blue you don't often see in samplers. I love this little girl because she really kept me on my toes when I was charting and stitching her. These sort of little border band examples, they're all not complex, they're intricate, that's the word I want to use, and beautiful colour changes, that this was just so rewarding to stitch. You know, this entertained my needle and my mind. Such a pretty sampler, and it was lovely seeing Sherry's one framed. She can hang that on her wall now. The other finish that I saw was Mary Wigglesworth. Now this sampler, oh, I love this one so much. This one hangs on the wall closest to my stitching chair. Such a pretty sampler. This band, I keep on saying to myself, I must restitch this band and put it on a smool or make it into a drum. It's glorious. There's something ta-da about this sampler when you look at it. It just sort of, I don't know, it sort of like hits all the boxes for me. And that red, it's such a beautiful shade of red. It's so pretty. And the fact that she was 58 when she stitched the sampler. I stitched this in my 58th year as well. It's a truly glorious sampler. Now, I want to show you something on this sampler. Can you see these little dots down here? These little dots? And this is a message for Melissa. Melissa, this is fly poo. Or spider poo. Melissa and I have had this big conversation about always keeping your work covered, whether it's glazing your samplers or covering your work when it's not in use. And for me, it's the dogs, because dogs shake their head and they have slobber, but it's also because of fly or spider poo. Now, this isn't a very nice thing to talk about, but we all have spiders and flies where we live. Because we live near the coast, we get an invasion of a certain type of fly every year, and they're an absolute nuisance. Drives me mad. But if that sampler did not have glass on it, that would be marked now. Trying to get fly poo or spider poo off fabric is an absolute nightmare. But because it's glazed, I'm going to get my window lean out before I rehang it and clean that off. So important to keep your work covered, Melissa. When we were at the attic last month, we had this big conversation around the table about keeping your work covered because of fly or spider poop. Funny sort of conversation to have, but there we are. Okay, I think that rounds it up for this week. On Tuesday, I have to go up to London. Normally if I go up to London, I stay over. I just have not got the time to do that. So I've got to go up to London and back in a day. That's 12 hours driving. So I've decided to catch the train, which is probably going to be about 11 and a half hours in total. But at least I can sleep on the train. So it's not as bad as having to drive that length of time. It's crazy. I'm going up for an appointment, which will only be a few hours. Yeah, I'm spending all that time travelling. That's one of the drawbacks of living in Cornwall, which is so far away from everything. Tomorrow, Sue's coming around. Our husbands play golf on a Monday, so Monday's a good day for us to get together. We're doing more packing for the Great British Sampler weekend. So yeah, we've got a busy day tomorrow, busy day Tuesday, Wednesday we catch up, and there is something on Thursday. Next week will be gone in a flash. Anyway, I hope you have a good week. Stay well, stay safe. Bye-bye.